Hey, it's Nicole. Welcome back to the show. I'm excited to have you here because today's guest was impressive, and I can't wait to introduce you to him. When his doctor asked him at the age of 29, "Are you prepared for your heart attack?" That was the moment he realized that he needed to learn how to scale his businesses without stressing himself out. So he now runs his companies from the edge of mountains, next to a river, and he said 3 waterfalls. His bio tells me he owns 7 businesses, but I'm pretty sure we uncovered that there's an 8th one about to emerge. And he has generated over $1 billion for over 1,000 clients. Pretty impressive. Some of the brands that he's worked with include the giant you may know as Target, Time Magazine, and even American Express. After selling his first business, he acquired 3 more and has invested $3 million into companies just this year alone. His mission is to employ 200,000 people and to revolutionize the way that we reward good talent. Okay, let's go. Hey, if you're an entrepreneur who usually fast forwards intros just like this one, this is the podcast for you. Serial entrepreneurs. Dave, so excited to have you on the show. I want to ask the first question we ask every single guest. How would you finish the sentence? You know you're an entrepreneur when?
Oh man, know you're an entrepreneur when you start looking at your bank account every day.
Yeah. How early did you know?
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, I didn't have a bank account then, but at the age of 4, I sold my first item, and it was a picture that I drew as a 4-year-old to a family friend. And I told my grandparents at the time that I was going to sell it for $100. I didn't quite get what I wanted, but I did make $40 in the late 80s off a 4-year-old's picture. So that's kind of when I got started. And then I kept doing crazy things like that all throughout my childhood. So yeah, it's just in my bones.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh my gosh. I love it. Tell me, what do you do? What businesses do you own?
I own 3 different marketing and PR firms. They each kind of have their own function. I have a consulting firm that is just me consulting with other businesses, and we're producing all sorts of content around that now as well. We own 2 different SaaS products that provide SaaS work for small businesses, marketing agencies. And then the last one is a flight school. I own that with my brother. It's totally random. And then we are looking to purchase a cybersecurity firm right now, and we're in the process of finalizing that. And then this is the one that's really fun. We're on the verge of acquiring several European football clubs. That's very enjoyable as well.
This explains the shirt.
Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
I grew up playing soccer, as we call it in the States, and I really love the game. And I've always loved athletics, and so it just seemed like a natural place to head in.
Nice.
Incredible. And flying. You always loved flying.
I didn't, but it's been in my family for generations now. My grandfather was a pilot in the Air Force, flew for Delta Airlines. My dad was a pilot in the Air Force, flies for American Airlines. My brother is a pilot, flies for American Airlines. And so he and I said, we've always wanted to start a business together. Why not start a flight school? And we launched it in March of this year, and it's going to do $1 million in the first 9 months.
Of course it is.
Wow.
Incredible.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. I love it.
The first thing I want to kind of touch on is you said 2 different SaaS products. For some of our listeners who don't know what a SaaS product is, can you maybe touch on those 2 right off the bat?
Yeah. So a SaaS product, it's an acronym for software as a service. One of them that I own is called Longtail Pro. It's longtailpro.com. And they essentially are an SEO tool. So a lot of people are like, I know what search engine optimization is. I know the buzzword. I have no idea how to do it. I really don't know what that means. And so Longtail Pro is actually an older company. It's been around for 12 years, and it helps entrepreneurs and small business owners identify keywords that a lot of people in their industry are not optimizing for, that they can then write content about that will then drive traffic to their site, that they can generate more leads, more customers, more revenue through some of those actions. Because when you're trying to bootstrap or you don't have a ton of cash when you're getting started out, sometimes doing things on the cheap and putting lots of sweat labor into it, I've did it in my first business, can be extremely effective. And so it's essentially a tool that allows them to understand, hey, this is how I can move the ball forward for my business.
Cool. Thanks.
Cool. So what is your story? What led you to entrepreneurship? Was there a specific moment or event experience?
Always had this propensity to be someone that owns a business. When I was 10, I got a $5 loan from my dad went and bought candy bars for 25 cents and sold them for 50 cents out of my backpack. And that turned into selling erasers and pencils and pens to my classmates as a fourth grader. And then my first really foray into a grown-up business, I just had this moment where I saw other business owners, I was interacting with them, and I realized they weren't that smart. And I thought,
Gosh.
I'm actually smarter than this person, and they have a multi-million-dollar business, and I can see a lot of holes that they're not filling, they're not dealing with. What would happen if I started my own marketing agency? My background was in marketing and video. I'm going to date myself, but I was doing marketing in-house for companies, running their MySpace and their Friendster.
Oh my.
And building websites and doing video production. So I was doing all these marketing things, and I thought I have no idea how to really run a grown-up business, but I think I could run a marketing agency. So I started my first company when I was 25 and didn't know how to get a client, didn't know how to do anything. I just started winging it, worked 18 months, 2 jobs, had a full-time day job, 9 to 5, and around it in the morning, I'd wake up at 5, work on the business until 7:30, go to work, come back, hang out with my wife and young daughter at the time, and then go back to work from like 7:30 until about 10:30, 11 at night, and then work every weekend. That's basically how I got started.
Awesome.
I love it. So I always say if kids can see it, they can be it. Where does that confidence come from? Is there an entrepreneur in the family?
My dad actually started a business when he was in college. He started this lawn care company with a business partner, and they ran that for several years. My dad has this claim to fame that before he joined the Air Force, he had like 27 different jobs. He's got ADHD for days. And so he just always has to be moving. And after building that up for just a year or two, they ended up selling that lawn care company for a good bit of cash. And so I just knew if my dad can do it, I'm sure I could do it too.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. What's something that people would be surprised to learn about your early days as an entrepreneur?
I hustled my way to a 7-figure company. I didn't really have the sales and marketing figured out. So I just would network my way to different businesses. And at the age of 29, I went into my doctor. I'm like, hey, I'm getting close to 30. I should have a checkup. They did a stress test, and the doc comes in. He goes, we have tested 4,500 people, and you're the most stressed out person we've ever tested. If you don't change your behavior, you're not going to see 40. And at the time, my youngest daughter was 3. And so I'm like, okay, so I'm not even going to get to see her graduate high school. So that really became a thing where I had to figure out how to calm down, how to center myself, and then how to build businesses in such a way where I was not the guy that was being talked to all the time. I was just helping the staff really find the success that they needed to find with our clients and customers.
That doctor could have only helped you later on in the emergency room or on the table. He certainly wasn't going to advise you on a business plan. And I'm looking at someone who looks pretty chill and relaxed outside with his Ray-Bans on, looking like what would be one of the most relaxed entrepreneurs that I've met in a long time. Besides the love for your kiddo, how in the world did you devise that plan to find a way to keep growing, but to bring it all down to a level that you could make it past 40?
So I started re-engaging with practices that I had lost. As a kid, I played multiple sports. One of them was soccer, and I also did weightlifting. And so I started picking weightlifting back up again. As an entrepreneur, it's so easy just to keep burning on work that we neglect ourselves. So I started to work out on a regular basis. At first, it was just 2 or 3 times a week. And I just said to myself, hey, just get to the gym. If you work out for 10, 15 minutes, that's 10 or 15 minutes more than what you've been doing.
Yep.
So be gracious with yourself. The other thing that I started to do was I picked up meditation again, and that was incredibly beneficial. I also started to recognize that being out in nature was incredibly helpful to me. There was actually a study that came out recently that said if you stare at a green living plant for 3 minutes, there are measurable decreases in your cortisol. That was backed up later. I didn't know it at the time, but I had some evidence for that. I also just started to realize hey, what's my best self? And this was really a self-reflective time as I'm meditating, working out. I'm having more time to think about these things. I'm realizing, my best self is when I show up fully rested.
Yes.
Giving myself permission to take a nap during the day if I need it. And I would usually take a nap for 20, 30 minutes and then I'd be like, let's go. So really it was giving myself permission to do self-care was the first step towards that. And as I did that, what ended up occurring was I went, okay, I need to build businesses in such a way that I'm just the guy that's working on the business, not in the business. Clients and customers don't know who I am. They may hear of me, but they don't know me. And they go to my staff for help, for needs with issues, whatever is coming up. And I just get to do the things that I'm very, very gifted at, which is training my staff how to sell, training myself how to market and advertise, training my staff how to interact with each other in a helpful manner, developing them. So that's really been the difference. The more that I've narrowed my focus and found the things that are going to give me the most leverage, that's really where I've been able to grow exponentially.
Is there anything you would speak to Dave when he was working relentlessly, when he's working the two jobs? Is there anything that Dave needs to hear from today's Dave?
It's interesting, Matt. I actually got asked this today by someone else.
Oh, wow.
The thing that I would say is figure out how to market and sell your own products and services first. Like everyone gets really hung up on, I need to be a really good practitioner. And listen, you can't not deliver. So that's real. I've found that what most people lack, and this is certainly what I was doing, was an ability to generate enough leads or generate enough web traffic to then create enough new customers and clients that you can actually fulfill. And so where I was really killing myself was networking my way to the next sale. And they would be very lucrative deals. And I could never find the scale that I needed because I couldn't market and sell to a cold prospect.
So interesting. So I feel like if you look close, you could see the dent in my forehead from occasionally hitting the brick wall myself. So tell me, do you think that in all of the things, the tools that you shared with us on what you did, that one of them is kind of unspoken, that maybe you chose to live a little leaner so that you could grow the team more, whether that meant more hires, whether that meant a higher dollar amount hourly, so you could have the best team in place, which might meant your commissions, your budget, something changed for you. I think if more of us could say like, well, I don't have to do it all, but I also don't have to get paid at all either. Do you think there's some financial advice there that you could share?
Nicole, that's a fantastic question that I've never been asked on a podcast before. So double bonus points to you. Yeah, I have some.
All right, Matt.
I'm like, oh, Matt, I was just asked that earlier on today, the same exact question. The next question that comes out of her mouth is, I've never been asked that.
If it makes you feel any better, no one had asked me the question that you asked me until today. So to be fair.
Oh, okay. I was just second in line. Okay, there we go.
So Nicole, I think it's one of those things where I had a philosophy early on that I was going to keep my pay always above everyone else, but it may only be $1,000 more a year than everybody else. And that first year and a half, I didn't pay myself a dime and I did pay other people. Like that was really part of it, was that I realized what I was doing and I was making all the sales. I was fulfilling a lot of the services. I wasn't taking home anything. And then when I did take home money after that 18 months, it was a meager $30,000. And I was making less than what anybody else was making at the time. But as the company started to scale up a little bit, I just kind of kept in mind that I'm going to make lots of money. That's a foregone conclusion. I don't need to make a lot of money today. And so I really just went, okay, my family can live on $72 a year. It's not comfortable. It's not a rich life, but we can do it. As my family grew, we're now a family of 5 and a dog. Our needs have increased, but I could still live on less. I have friends, they're single people. They'll pay themselves $450,000 a year. They've got a business doing $1.5 million in total revenue. I'm going to share this with your listeners because it's fun. I've got 8 different businesses and I pay myself about $200 a year. Now I could pay myself exponentially more than that, but I don't. I reinvest in the business. I reinvest in the marketing. I reinvest in the advertising to grow the companies. And I also reinvest in purchasing more businesses every year. This year alone, we've spent $3 million in acquisitions or in reinvesting in our companies to help them grow. And so that's why I can go look to buy a soccer team or 5 like we want to. We have that cash flow.
I love it.
I love it.
So good, folks. So good.
Dave is a very intelligent man, folks. please get your pen and paper out because you are getting a earful today.
Dave, I was thinking about Matt's question when he asked you, what would you say to pre-Dave? And I was thinking about your long tail pro. Would you say that was partly serving your earlier self by purchasing that, by selling that now, by offering that today to clients?
Yeah, my big thing is I really believe that small business is where the action's at. A lot of times people in media or in social media, they will espouse the evils of business. And what they actually mean is the evils of large corporations that have divorced themselves from the people that they're serving and the people that are employed there.
Yeah.
And so my big thing is that we have this beautiful gift called entrepreneurship. We have this wonderful idea called small business where you can have a really big impact on your community. You can have a very large impact on your employees. And so my big vision is to have 2,000 companies employing 200,000 people because that's where the action's at. The action is in the small business. And so for me, whenever we acquire new companies or we start new companies, it's all in an effort to make the world a more beautiful, loving place. And one of the ways that we do that is by creating economies through the new businesses that we acquire and start so that we can provide people with excellent places to work where they're compensated excellently, have great benefits, and have reasonable ownership to be accountable to.
Speaking of great cultures, it sounds like you guys invest so much into not just the external community, the local businesses, but your internal community, your own people, your own employees. How are you redefining your culture for your own organization?
We've tried a bunch of different things, Matt. We've tried to give people healthcare before we're legally obligated to give them healthcare benefits. So typically, if a company hits 20 employees, we're already ready to get them into that kind of space. We're going to allow our employees to invest in short-term rental units with us. And so we're creating a company that's going to manage that. So they're now having investing opportunities in that, and the company will match it. So if they put in $250 a month, the company will put in $250 a month. It gives them cash flow on their own. It's one of the ways that we provide equity. Another thing we've done is we'll identify really, really talented employees. A lot of times they don't have any cash. So what I'll do is I'll bankroll them and we'll give them the services from the other companies to help that company succeed. And now they have equity in a company that they're putting in sweat equity, but they're able to make real money off of it. And they're able to launch their own company with a lot of the backing and support of the umbrella organization. Lastly, we are very generous with our time off policy, bereavement policy. We think that maternity and paternity leave should be a given and it should be paid for by the employers. Our maternity leave is a full pay of 6 weeks, and then they can take 6 weeks beyond that if they want. And paternity is 2 weeks, and they can take an additional 2 weeks after that unpaid if they want. And that's not mandated by the federal government. That's not mandated by any state government that we have employees in. That's something that we do because we think it's the right thing to do.
Wow.
Where do you come from? You're a breath of fresh air, man.
Yeah, seriously.
I mean, you're what we hope is out there, but man, geez, great people.
Good stuff.
Love it.
Dave, what is the most difficult thing about owning multiple businesses?
You're responsible for more people. So you're always going, hey, how can I make sure that every business is being successful? This is just a decision that I make daily, sometimes hour by hour. Where can I spend my time that will have the greatest leverage to have the best outcome? So an example, like any company, there are companies that I have out of the 8 that will have moments where they're just going straight up and everything's golden, everything's great. And then, and most entrepreneurs don't know this until they've done it, you'll hit a number, you'll hit a revenue that you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that we're doing $1 million. I can't believe that we're doing 5. I can't believe that we're doing 20 million. And your profit starts to slip. And maybe you're not profitable for a while. And I've had many conversations with many seasoned entrepreneurs, some that were in like the top 10 fastest growing companies in the country. They're doing tens of millions in revenue and they're putting their payroll on credit cards. And so what I do a lot is I go, hey, this business is struggling. I need to put my finger on the scale. So the hardest thing really is deciding sometimes where and how to spend my time because there's so many options of what could be possible. And then it's also where and how should we spend our dollars? Because there are a lot of shiny objects out there that I could invest in, and it's picking the right ones. One of the misconceptions that I had early on in my entrepreneurial career was I thought if we got bigger, if we had more revenue, my problems would be solved. And here's what I've come to find, and I preach to our staff all the time. Like, listen, y'all, we're going to solve this problem, and it will inherently create another problem or two that we will then have to solve, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just understanding that even when you solve the revenue problem, you're going to have new problems. And that's the game. The game is you will solve a problem and create a new one or several. So you might as well just enjoy the game that is being a business owner, being an entrepreneur, live it up and soak up every second you got, because it won't always be this way. And there will be moments where you will get bigger and you will reminisce about the good old days where you could just have 4 staff members. And you'd have very personal relationships with them. And you could say all sorts of things and be very honest and transparent with everyone because everyone knew your heart and who you were. And then as the company grows, you don't have those relationships anymore.
And then legal steps in and says, you can't say it like that because someone's going to misconstrue it. They don't know your heart, Dave.
That's right.
Right. Oh my gosh, I love it. So we talk a lot about the good, the bad, and the wonky of business because it's not always ugly. It is a game to be played, that's for sure. I'm a chronic optimist, but the realist in me always says, though, there's still obstacles that happen. Can you talk to us about an obstacle?
I think that the greatest obstacles that I've encountered every time are related to, there have been a number of times in every business where we have encountered an obstacle that was extremely uncomfortable. And every time that we've encountered that obstacle, addressed it and went through it, not around it, going through it, it's led to exponential growth of our companies. And so I'll give you a real life example. In my first company, I started it with a co-founder who was my best friend at the time. He and I were very, very close. He very quickly ended up going full-time with the business, and I was selling it. That 18 months in my first business when I was working my full-time job and doing the business, he was actually just working in the business. And so it was a real challenge when after 3 years, it became apparent that this was not a good fit anymore. And he's my good friend. He is someone that I deeply loved. I'd been in his wedding. He was referred to as an uncle to my kids. It was very, very close. And I knew that we had just gone in different directions when it came to where the business was heading. He really wanted to have a lifestyle business and work like 35 hours a week. And I needed to make money for my growing family. So I flew to where he was located and stayed at his house. And I knew what conversation was coming. And I basically said, hey, listen, we need to part ways. And the whole night, the night before, I was sick to my stomach. I was awake all night. I literally didn't sleep at all. I was just ill. And the year after I bought him out and he moved on, basically fired him as a business partner is kind of how the conversation went. We tripled our revenue because I built the company in the way that I needed to. And so I think anytime that you encounter obstacles, a lot of people's default nature is to avoid them or to try and go around them. And it's been my experience that when you see an obstacle coming, just address it head on.
Yeah. I have to know, how's that friendship? How's that uncleship today?
I wish I could say that it's cemented, but it's not. I don't know about you two, but this has been my experience. I can be as loving and kind and gracious as possible. And other people will have their own stories because they're their own hero. And so they see it differently, no matter how kind you can be. I've reached out to him a number of times and he just doesn't want to have a relationship, which makes me sad. And I also understand if we became friends again at some point, I would love it.
Yeah. Dave, what is something that you want us to know about your business?
I love watching business owners find success. The thing that I love about the consulting work that I do is that it's really just giving people the wisdom of experience. Hey, listen, let me help you avoid the mistakes that cost me relationships, money, time, health. Some of the businesses that we've taken on for consulting, I had one company that came to me, they're doing $10,000 a month in revenue. And in the first 6 months, they went from doing $10,000 a month in revenue to doing $82,000 a month in revenue. And a lot of times people think that that's crazy. But if you do some really smart branding moves, if you simplify the language around how you talk about what you do to your customer, you find some sustainable and affordable marketing channels, which I find for a lot of people, it's amazing how well you can scale that up and really grow it. And if people are interested in that, they can certainly reach out to me more about what that looks like. You can have really big growth if you have a guide who's helping you get there. I always like to say the person that I'm working with is Luke Skywalker. Their job is to kill Darth Vader and destroy the Death Star.
Right.
I'm just Yoda, man. Like, I'm not old in years, but I'm old in entrepreneur years.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so my job is just to guide people to the ultimate destiny. I can't do it for them, but they can do it with just a little bit of guidance.
Nice.
I'm glad you used that example because I often use the Hunger Games Katniss example. And I often say, but I'm not the drunken Woody Harrelson. So that's a much better one.
That's good. I like it.
Yeah.
Is there something that you would tell someone that's thinking about either a new product in their business or, you're taking them on and you're heading to 2000. So certainly you've learned a few things already and you plan to learn a whole lot more.
Simple works. Simplify how many products you offer. Simplify how many services you offer. Do that really well. So like whenever I take on a company now, I love to have 1 or 2 services. And sometimes I'll combine them, or I'll have 1 or 2 products and I'll combine them, or 3 layers of a product. And the reason behind that is people want simple. That's really what we all want. Life's complicated. Things are nuanced. There's all sorts of things that people are dealing with on their own. And if you think about it really as yourself, use yourself as the case study. When you're looking for a product or a service, how many other things do you have going on today? You're talking to your kids, you're talking to your significant other, you've got a car payment due, you've got a this, you've got a that, whatever it is, there's a lot going on. So if you can offer someone a simple solution, it's going to make a big difference. That's number 1. Number 2 is sell something based on the result, not the extra things. So if the result is, I'm going to help you increase your revenue, sell that. If the result is, I'm going to help you save time, sell that. If the result is, I'm going to help you improve your relationship with your kids, your significant other, sell that. They want the end result. They don't want the benefits or the features. That's not what they're buying.
You mentioned about simplifying services. A lot of our folks listening, many of them are some type of professional service provider. So you mentioned, is it 2 or 3 marketing businesses? So
3.
Does one of them have just a couple services, whereas other agencies would just like try to shove it all together and confuse or be something that maybe not every customer needs? So there's too much decisions.
This is where the wisdom comes in. So my first business was a catch-all digital agency. We did websites and advertising and organic social media. And people would come to our website and it was a beautifully built website like every other agency out there. It was absolutely aesthetically astounding. And people would say, Dave, I checked out your website. I have no idea what you do. And so the way that I scaled was I said, we're a digital advertising agency and we specialize in Facebook and Instagram ads. And people then had an orientation to who we were and what we did. All 3 of those agencies only have 1 or 2 things that they do. So we have a PR firm. They do 2 things. They'll get you booked on podcasts like this, or they will get you into traditional publications. We have an SDR firm. All they do is book meetings on your calendar with other businesses. That's it. SDR stands for Sales Development Rep. So all they're doing, if you're selling B2B, is just putting meetings on your calendar. The best part is if you sell on results, which we do, your results just scale. So we had one client who said, hey, Dave, you're doing great. You're getting us, I think it was 50 meetings a month. Could you scale us to 6,500 meetings a year? And I said, yeah.
Oh.
And they said, how much would that cost? And we said, $100,000 a month, but we need a year agreement. They said, yes. Because if you sell on results and you're simplistic with your messaging, people know how to engage with you.
Wow. Great.
Love it. So I feel like in some cases we read the same books or we've gone to the same business school, yet I don't recall seeing you at IU. So I need to know, what are some resources that have given you the unlock, that have changed the way you look at business or just keep growing what you know already?
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay, cool. So the first one is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. I love it because it's all about just doing the work. A lot of times when I was early on in my entrepreneurial journey, I was so frozen because I've never started a business before. How do I do this? How do I do the marketing? How do I do the sales? And it's all about just getting after it and just putting in the work. Some other ones that I'm really excited to give these. One is by one of my favorite authors, Ryan Holiday. He talks about Stoic philosophy a lot. I am a Stoic philosopher. My bachelor's degree was in philosophy. Just goes to show that you don't need to have a bachelor's degree in marketing to do marketing. Anyways, his book, Courage is Calling, is absolutely game-changing. I love it. In order to be an entrepreneur, you have to be courageous. You have to, in the face of fear, take action. And then the last one, it's a book by a spiritual teacher that was very, very popular in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. His name is Ram Dass, and there's a book called Grist for the Mill. People always ask me, Dave, like, how do you have these businesses that seem to be very compassionate, conscious, helpful? The teachings from Ram Dass are incredibly beneficial to me. I've read all of his books, listened to many of his talks, and his idea and philosophy towards the world is incredibly helpful and loving and compassionate. People that have read that from my staff find it to be very, very, very helpful as well. And they're surprised at the indirect but very direct application that it has to business.
I love the fact that here on a business related podcast, you chose to reference a spiritual book. It just goes to show what your company is about, what you guys are leaning towards, because if you're taking some of those principles and applying those into your business, that means your employees, everybody in your organization is feeling that same methodology or same principles that came from that book.
I think it's important, Matt and Nicole, that we acknowledge people as being whole beings. And a lot of times we want to talk about the emotional, the physical, the financial, because that's safe. And we're afraid to tread into the waters of spirituality because everyone has a different take. The reality is, though, a lot of people will acknowledge there's some sort of spirituality or religion that they do have and that they practice. And those practices are so vital to who we are as people that to neglect them, to your point, Matt, is missing a whole space of who a person is. And so, yeah, it's really important that we address it as entrepreneurs.
Fantastic. Awesome.
I love it.
Awesome.
Also, because us entrepreneurs out here, man, if we don't have faith in something,
Exactly.
It's something.
Dave, what is one of the key lessons you've learned as an entrepreneur?
I think for me that one of the key lessons is it's really about being able to communicate with other people. And so if you're going to improve not only your entrepreneurial life, but also your personal life, become radically obsessed with being a very clear communicator. The more clear you can be in your business, in your marketing, in your significant relationships, the more impactful of a life you'll live and the more fulfilling of a life you're going to live.
What is something you say over and over and over again?
It won't always be this way. So if things are hard right now, this too shall pass. If things are great right now, this too shall pass. Things won't always be this way. So whatever is going on, enjoy it. If a company is struggling, I tell them in the midst of their struggle, I'll step into an all hands stand up sort of meeting. I say, guys, just remember, y'all, it's not always going to be this way. It's going to get easier at some point. We're not going to have a small staff all the time. It's going to get bigger. Enjoy having 20 people here because it's going to be 50. Just strap in, enjoy these problems because we're going to have new ones.
Interesting outlook, because so many people say that, but they're usually referencing only the negative. This too shall pass. This too shall pass. I like that you're also referencing the positive too, that you're reminding yourself.
I see it as parenting. Like, right, there's a time when you're like, I'm up all night with them, but yet you can put them in the car seat and just take them for the drive if you need them to go to sleep. And then you want them to do that at 5 and they're like, I'm not going to sleep. So yes. Hey, what's your definition of entrepreneurial success?
It's got to be living the life that you want. It's got to be it. So like for me, I don't want to be in one location living my whole life. I want to have multiple experiences. So my family and I travel and we love it. We want to be in nature a lot. So we travel to nature places. We will go see my family a lot and stay there for months at a time. It's really living the life that you want to live. And if you're an entrepreneur that's traded one boss for 20, that's a rough life. And so you want to get to the place where you can find that freedom financially and time-wise to be able to do what you want to do.
Awesome. Tell me, what is next for you, Dave?
So in January, I have my first book coming out. It's actually about the 6 core values that we run all of our businesses with. The actual date is not there yet, and we still are finalizing the title with the publisher, and we're finalizing that right now as we are recording this. We're super excited for that to come out and to acquire more businesses in the near future.
Oh my gosh. And then is there a follow-up that tells us how to squeeze out an extra 24 hours in the day? Like, is that coming too?
Yeah.
Maybe. You never know.
Good enough. Where's the best place for people to connect with you, hang out with you online?
Yeah. So people can find me on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok. Yeah, I'm on the TikTok. You can find me at real Dval, DVAL. And you can also reach out to me, David at rethinkcreative.org. If you have any questions, you want to hear more about my businesses, whatever I've got going on, that's
Yeah.
actually my personal email address. So you can hit me up.
Nice.
Cool.
Nice.
Very Gary Vee style of you.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Nicole, and that's the end of the interview. But stick around. This is the part where Matt and I break it all down and give you our favorite takeaways. Listen in.
The reminder of self-care came from a doctor. That is not the way that you want to be reminded. So folks, if you're listening, this is your reminder. But I love that he reminded me specifically, I heard it loud and clear, thank you, was even if it meant 10 to 15 minutes to get to the gym or a little bit of outside time or to get back to something that you loved as a kid. When I heard him talk about soccer or lifting weights, I thought, man, I used to always swim and I would lift weights. I just thought, oh my gosh, yes. Why? Why don't we find the space? We burn the candle instead and we forget to put ourselves on the list for 10 or 15 minutes.
I agree. I love the fact he even referenced the study regarding looking at a plant in nature, the cortisol levels go down. And it is something that we can engage with to have better self-care. I know myself, I work better when I'm by some sort of body of water. Like when I have chances to disengage and connect, it brings a peace, it brings a calmness to me that I don't have living in the middle of the Midwest. Ironically, I get that.
Love it. What do you got?
The big thing was when it comes to people, the more and more we have people on the show, we ask, what's the most difficult thing? People. It happens over and over and over again. Specifically in this case, which is really interesting, and I did not want to bore all of our listeners today, getting into all the legal side of it. But I mean, you have to wonder, here you have a really good friend, you started a business. What are you doing to protect the relationship? What kind of contracts were there? What actually occurred in that specific instance at the moment in time they created the company? Because what they did initially could have potentially protected the relationship long-term. Maybe it would have, have a different result at the end of the day, but it could have just based upon what could have happened initially when the business was first formed, because contracts can protect people.
Right. So you're talking about specifically him forming that first business with a partner and then the partner working full time in it, but then he was clearly funding it, right? Like that's what it sounded like. He was working another job and yes, while he was doing all the sales. So he was really funding that. And had there been an early conversation, it could have maybe protected the relationship because he would have seen up front, he really should have always owned the majority.
Yep.
It should have always been, it's mine, we work together, it's mine, you have a share, it's mine, you have several shares.
Right.
But that could have potentially protected it. It may have blown up that relationship anyway early on. Like, wait a minute, I don't work for you, which could have happened faster. But I know for myself, you have to see those conversations and just have them. But it maybe could have helped having a conversation earlier on, but you don't know it till you know it,
No, exactly.
What we do know is that people are people-y. And we need to make sure that we care for them the best way we can, which he certainly does.
What else you got?
The other one that I have that I'm really going to take down and maybe do some writing on it on the wall, with my big stickies is just simplify. I, by design, have a marketing agency that is a little bit different than other marketing agencies. In fact, I always kind of cringe at the word a little bit because we do things different. We try to get results in a day as opposed to retainer over a long time. And he talked about, when I asked him, they were a big catch-all agency at first, which is the thing I try to avoid to be, because I find that people get overwhelmed with decisions. And while I want to be their answer for a lot of things, I am the answer for their digital marketing. And we do that very specific ways. And while we've grown a couple services out of need, he just reminded me to come back to really just has to be one or two things. Otherwise, it might need to be a separate business. And I thought that was really powerful to hear that he has 3 separate marketing companies. And then he has software that supports marketing decisions that I really took that one to heart. And I'm going to pretend like we were in a one-on-one. He was consulting me.
I agree 100%. And you know what's funny? When it comes from the marketer, it sounds so much more different than coming from the lawyer who says, no, you really do need to have a separate business for this. It is such a different revenue stream. It has different liabilities, has different risk involved. There are so many different problems that occur in this business because of that specific revenue stream. That should be a different business. But yet it sounds so much better when it comes out of the marketer. That's what I heard.
It's funny because, we've talked a lot about your 1-pot theory or your 4-pot theory. So more on that some other time, folks. But SmartCookie has been the larger entree, if you will. But yet I had an events that don't suck. And I always knew that needed to be separate because of the revenue streams, because of the insurance and the liability like you speak of. And those do sometimes feel obvious. But at the end of the day, it was a marketing agency that also produced events and then that also produces a podcast now. And so you're right. It seems so much simpler when a marketer introduces it. So maybe you should think about that next time. Bring me on with one of your business meetings when you need to tell somebody that.
Exactly.
Thanks, folks, if you're listening. We really loved this podcast episode with Dave. I hope that you share it all the places. And if you're listening, you know what we always say?
Keep listening.